Disruptive is a movement ultimately cultivated to propel business owners to intentionally change the trajectory of their legacy. It's about wealth building, wealth thinking, and all of the mistakes you make along the journey. This is Disruptive.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We have with us Dr. Steve Gallen III, the Vice Chair for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Thank you so much, Dr. Gallen, for joining me today.
Thank you, Jessica. Glad to be here. I want to continue to commend you for the outstanding work you're doing throughout this community, this state, and quite frankly, this nation through Hip Hop Rockstar and all of the endeavors that you're involved in that are intended to help businesses, but more importantly, to elevate this community. So salute to you, my sister. Salute to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I always appreciate when I have in my my sphere thought leaders like yourself. I mean, you are the from Miami-Dade County Public Schools. That is such a huge endeavor, not to someone who is not willing, capable, and passionate about serving your community. We thank you for all you've done, all you are doing. You are on the front lines, and you have many of the things that we as parents and stakeholders in the community need to know. So I would love to jump right in it. I don't want to take too much of your time, but we're looking at Monday. Parents are getting ready to send their kids, quote unquote, back to school with now terming as distant learning. What is that going to mean for us on March 30th?
Absolutely. It's going to be a continuation of what has been a significant, in some cases, very painstaking epiphany for many parents. We've often stated that parents are the primary teachers of their children. I think that came into a tremendous heartfelt realization when we made a determination to close schools as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic that is perplexing our state and our nation. I want to commend our parents who really stepped up to the plate, really engaged the learning process with a very short turnaround time, and really have been involved in educating their children for a week prior to spring break. But what we're going to see is an amplified effort to continue the education of our children, to continue our children's engagement and structure and learning. And again, would be remiss if I did not commend the School Board of Miami-Dade County, our outstanding superintendent, Mr. Alberto Cavallo, and his entire staff, our principals, our teachers, our employees, and everyone who has put their shoulder to the wheel of this tremendous work in these very, very challenging times. So what we're going to see on Monday is a continuation and amplification. We're calling it 2.0. We're looking at expanding what we have started. And again, we're here to support, to make sure that at the end of the day, our children's learning continues, despite what we're facing in terms of the COVID-19 restrictions, the mandatory closures of schools, social distancing, and all of the strategies that we're undertaking to make sure that our community, our children, and everyone is safe, and that at some point in time, hopefully sooner than later, we can resume a great degree of normalcy for our community and more importantly for our children who have been phenomenal. Our children have been phenomenal in this particular process.
Yes, they have. They have. And I also would like to commend the parents out there who are not only working from home, but also have become teachers as well, especially for our elementary school children who do need instruction. What do you say to some of those parents who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by an increase in assignments that may necessarily not be going on? The children were actually at school. Some are viewing it as a little more of busy work and unable to actually be able to complete the requirements of what's needed.
Yeah, what I say to those parents, even outside of the quantity of the work, the quality of the work, that sense of being overwhelmed is expected. It is normal. And quite frankly, they should be. Our teachers have been overwhelmed. Our principals have been overwhelmed. Being a parent is overwhelming. And to have a very rapid transition into that particular role is normal. So what I will say to those parents is it's okay. Number one, it's okay. That is okay to feel overwhelmed. Number two, the Miami-Dade County Public Schools and the full weight of our school board, our superintendent, our administrators, our teachers, our union, everyone is with them. And number three, we understand that we are swimming in uncharted waters. This is a very new experience, and that we're going to have some hiccups, but we are going to continue to swim together, elevate together, and our children shall not fail. As it relates to the nature and nuances of the work, I think the initial iteration of that probably was somewhat voluminous as they went into it. But I think compressing a certain amount of work in a week's time may be overwhelming, and it is. And being a former teacher, assistant principal, superintendent of schools, I understand the nuances of education at its very basic level. So again, the overwhelming sentiment is okay. We are going to get through this together. And I think the way to address that initially is to communicate with the teacher first and foremost. Our principals are still on deck. Our principals are still engaged. So communication is key. But again, I think that first week was overwhelming, but we're going to transition into this next iteration with some lessons learned, lessons learned from the first week. And again, being able to assuage some of those concerns and abate what has appeared to be busy work in some instances, and what has in some cases has been a dearth of work in others. So you had both sides of the equation, where some parents felt that they ran out of things to do for their children, right, and they did not have the necessary resources that they needed, or they didn't understand how to navigate the resources that were available. So at the end of the day, Jessica, it's okay. We all are overwhelmed, but we're going to be overwhelmed together, and we're going to work together so that we can prevail on behalf of the education of our children together.
Okay. And I do believe that is some of the sentiments that I've been hearing from parents with some of the things that you all have done by waiving, the testing that is needed statewide, also testing that's needed for graduation. Speak to some facts as it relates to seniors and graduations. I know that there are parents that are concerned about their 12th graders.
Yes. And what we saw when we made a determination to close schools at the onset, we saw a plan that was predicated on the anticipated reality.
We lost you there. There we go. I can see you now.
The anticipated reality of our students having to face the FSA. So when we closed schools, the FSA was still on the table. Subsequent to that, we've had a number of declarations from Governor Ron DeSantis, the Commissioner of Education, Richard Corcoran, who actually suspended all state required assessments. So as we transitioned into the initial iteration of this, we had to prepare lessons in an instructional program out of the Office of Academics, which had the FSA testing being in place. Right now, that has been suspended. So not to say we're going to abate our expectations, but the level of accountability that our teachers face day in and day out, the level of accountability that's anticipated from our principals day in and day out, that level of accountability that we face as a school district day in and day out and year out with respect to state accountability, school letter grades, that was suspended. So now that gave us an opportunity to take a step back, because we don't have the burdens and the pressures of accountability, which, in some cases have been described as draconian in some communities, and really can have significant implications if you don't get that right. And again, as the board member in District 1, we want to continue to get that right. No FRD schools. So the stakes remain very high as it related to accountability. That was on the table when we went into that initial phase. That is not on the table anymore. So we still have on the table the learning of our students, and we still have on the table the matriculation, the graduation of our seniors who have worked 12, 13 years to get to this point in their lives. They may obviously miss some senior activities, but the most important thing that they have to look for and what they have as a property right is their graduation and their diploma. So we're going to continue to work through that particular process. And the governor has stated, the Commissioner of Education has stated, Our school board has affirmed, and our superintendent has also declared that no student will be subject to any punitive recourse because of this particular new transition. But we are calling it distant learning. So distant learning means we're still expecting our students to learn, expecting them to perform, expecting them to compete and complete their required assignments. So for example, as a former high school principal, if you did not have the necessary grade point average going in, if you did not have the necessary course credits for graduation, that is in place. But if you came into this particular pandemic and the suspension of schools with everything being in place, it is your role and your responsibility as a graduating senior to continue on that path. Because quite frankly, let's face it, if you perform from August through March, and you're looking at April, May, and June, you just continue on that trajectory of performance, do what you need to do, make sure that all of your requirements have been satisfied and will continue to be satisfied. And we're going to do that through distance learning.
Okay. I'm sure that you have put some senior parents' worries to ease with that statement. Now, something else that I know.
Let me throw something in, Jessica. You know, I always like to keep it 100. Now, if you were a senior, I always said when I was a high school principal for 7 years, I had seniors and I had graduating seniors, two groups.
Right.
Some are 12th graders and some are graduating seniors. They're in position to graduate. So now if you're a 12th grader and you had a 1.0 grade point average in March, you're not going to be able to leverage the pandemic and the suspension of schools to that point. So I want to be very, very clear about that. So those students who are on a pathway, continue on that pathway. Those students who had some improvements to make, we're going to continue to support you. But again, no student is going to be unfairly punished because of the suspension of schools. We're going to continue to implement that program through distance learning. I just wanted to say that out there and put out that commercial break. So the windows of free-flowing passes toward graduation are not open.
Right.
There's going to be a pathway that one has to earn, and we would have expected those students have been earning it throughout their school career, but equally important, if not more importantly, starting in August of 2019 through March of 2020.
Okay. Now, there was something that was pressed on your heart to ensure that children were not hungry. You got it passed so that they would be able to still enjoy breakfast and enjoy lunch. They are going through this distant learning and not physically being at school. Can you speak to that, some of the distribution sites and what that would look like?
Yes, I like to definitely qualify that as one of the most significant pieces of legislation that I brought forth as a school board member. In 2017, actually, when I was in New Orleans and I was being awarded the Council of Urban Boards of Education National Achievement Legacy, a Legacy in Education Award for my lifetime achievement.
Right.
They often ask what was the policy position that I was the most proud of. And it was that policy position. And that was born out of the tragedy and the challenges of Hurricane Irma. We had school out for nearly 12 to 14 days. I don't remember exactly. I was a 9-dayer, meaning my lights were out for 9 days. And I spent time in the community giving out ice, giving out food. And we did some tremendous work. And it warmed my heart one night to communicate with the superintendent and the board. What are we doing for children who right now are hungry? As we understood, we have over 75% of our students in Miami-Dade County Public Schools that are on free and reduced lunch. Tragedies and challenges like that become an exacerbator for poverty. It's easy, Jessica, to say, okay, we have the hurricane preparedness checklist. This is what you need to have on your list. You need a flashlight, you need batteries, you need gas, if you have a generator, you need to have 2 weeks of food and canned goods and all of those things. And very often we're talking to parents who are struggling to keep food on the table from one day to the next. And so it becomes somewhat cynical, if not hypocritical. And quite frankly, for parents and communities that are underserved and living in poverty, it is unrealistic. And we understood that many of our children get their meals from school, breakfast, lunch, and a snack. So as we went into a significant amount of days, I sent an email around 11:30, 12 o'clock midnight, and say, what are we going to do for the children as we continue to maybe go into day 7, day 8, day 9? We got together, the district responded with a plan over the next 2 days before school returned. And at that time, we fed nearly 50,000 children and families over the course of 2 days. That was the full weight, the capacity of the Miami-Dade County Public School Board in a very short period of time. What I decided to do is not make that an episodic endeavor. It was not just going to be an episode. I thought that you sustain these kind of practices, you sustain these priorities through policy. And then I proffered an item that in the future, it was not a matter of if a hurricane was going to come again, it was a matter of when. I did not anticipate a pandemic, but fortunately, when I wrote the item not about hurricanes. I wrote the item about mandatory school closures. Good. So that was in 2017, that in the event that we have a mandatory school closure, we'll have a plan in place to feed our children. And that is what we've implemented. And I want to commend our school board for their support of that item at the time. It was passed and supported unanimously. Our superintendent, the entire staff, our principals, our cafeteria managers, who have been the unsung heroes, working throughout this, and the cafeteria workers to make this happen. So that is going to continue. And again, that is a matter of a policy position of the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. And I was honored and humbled to see that the state and, quite frankly, the nation caught wind. I was contacted by a national reporter about that, saying that this was something that I initiated in 2017, and it caught wind at this particular time across the nation, to the extent that the National School Lunch Program relaxed the regulations and the requirements, the red tape, the bureaucratic constraints that impede our ability to freely feed our children. So that's going to continue starting Monday, as it has been, grab and go, breakfast and lunch. And for those parents that have some struggles to get to the school site, reach out to the principal, contact the district, contact my office, and we'll be able to address that.
Okay. That sounds good. I got one more question for you. And this is something that's very important right now, because we're looking at a lot of unemployment, and we're looking at people who have not received the check because they are part-time workers, hourly workers. I know this is something else that is very passionate on you. And I want to see, what do you have in stake that you can tell those people who are facing that, who work for Miami-Dade County Public Schools?
We have a plan of action. We have a plan in place. Wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna let him go.
Wait a minute. No, I'm just 1 second. 1 second. Wait. We have a plan in place, and that plan obviously was born, believe it or not, back in February of 2018. I proffered an item in 2018. Myself and another colleague, Dr. Feldman, I released my item because we felt that his item addressed it. So we contemplated some of that in 2018. Come here. In 2018. Fast forward now, I proffered an item last week. That will be item SP10. That will address this particular issue of making sure that our part-time and our hourly employees are compensated. The superintendent has been contemplating and has developed a plan to support that. So I do want to say publicly, with the support of our board at the special meeting on Tuesday, with the support and leadership of our superintendent and our staff, we do have a plan. We're very proud to have a plan to provide for our part-time and hourly employees who have provided a tremendous contribution to our school district and to this community and to our children. So we have a plan to take care of them, and that will be unfolded in the next coming days. And I'm very, very proud. That will be board item SP9 at the school board that I'm sponsoring to address that particular issue.
We look forward to seeing where that ends. We know it will be very positive for the community. We want to thank you, Dr. Gallen, for your time today. And we ask all of you to just take this video, share it with your friends, continue to get information that people need to know, and not things that you just get haphazardly offline, because it's not all factual, okay? Thank you for joining us. Thank you again, Dr. Gallen. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate you all providing this opportunity to inform and engage our community during these very challenging times. Thank you.
This broadcast is copywritten and cannot be reproduced or rebroadcast without the written consent from Jessica Garrett-Modkins of Hip Rockstar Media for any and all parties involved in the broadcast. Copyright all rights reserved 2019. This has been a Hip Rockstar production.